Ladies and gentlemen, can I request you to get back to your seats? We would like to resume for the final section. Again, all the ushers with the red lanyards, can I get your help to usher the people back into the room? Welcome back from the break, folks. All right, can we get the doors, please? Candice, can we get the doors? I think everybody is in. Those who aren't, please usher them back in. Hi. Please grab your tea and coffee and come right back in, please. Thank you. This is the fun part of my job. All right, I think we will start. Ladies and gentlemen, please take your seats. We are in the fourth and the final segment of the day. And this session is on the fourth industrial revolution policy choices. And we will have with us Professor Ewart, Professor Emeritus at Oxford University, the Center on Skills, Knowledge and Organization Performance, also known as SKOPE, and one of the key collaborators for the Digital Futures of Work research program. He's going to present to us on his thesis about recalibrating the fourth industrial revolution's trajectory and the policy choices that we can make to ensure a fairer future of work. I'll leave it to him to introduce himself a little more and his topic. But after this, we'll have a panel discussion, as always, as we've been doing so far. So with that, Professor, all yours.
Thank you very much. It's a great pleasure. Thank you very much. It's a great pleasure to be here. My role in all this is to try and turn, given what we've heard in the rest of the conference, to turn to the policy response to many of the points that have been raised. Okay, I want to sort of set out, before I address this slide, just very quickly, the purposes and aims of what I'm going to do. This presentation looks at other countries. It has some very global observations to make, but it also tries to then zoom in on some very practical challenges that are likely to confront Singaporean individuals, organizations, and the government, given what we've heard. I want to try and identify what underpins policy success elsewhere, but always with the caveat that what you can do is policy learning, not policy borrowing. I want to provide a few examples, as I say, of policy challenges, and I want to pose a fundamental question at the end for policymakers, and by policymakers I'm defining that as broadly as I can, because policy and the policy process involves a large range of stakeholders. I start the main body of my presentation with a warning, which I'm pleased to see other people have almost all of them raised, which is that we're in very early days and the future is very uncertain. At the moment, it's very hard to know how the adoption of AI will pan out, but I'm willing to bet that 3-4 years from now, our understanding of it and its implications will be very much clearer than they are today. The key thing is that we're getting in early. This conference is happening at exactly the right moment in time. People are starting to wake up to AI and they're starting to think, what does it mean for us? And I think the key thing is that if you start thinking about that early, you have some chance of influencing and shaping what happens rather than simply letting change wash over you and then feel very unhappy about the results it delivers. Given what we've heard, I think there are two very clear meta challenges. They're up on that slide. But I'd want to also say that underlying those challenges are a set of meta themes about societal culture and values and priorities. And we've heard a lot about the way in which culture and values and priorities drive the way that organizations and nations respond to the potential of AI. It's also important to emphasize, because I'm going to do so later on, that the capacity to deliver on those aims and values and aspirations is very important. If your ambitions are low enough, it's easy to deliver them. I think my warning is that you will need fairly high aspirations if you want a happy ending to this story, and that means that delivery is going to be quite hard work. It's a multifaceted policy challenge. AI and digitalization will impact on a huge range of policies, and we've heard a lot about that. I'd flag up the bottom two. Social mobility and distributional outcomes. I come from a country where social attitude surveys tell us that the majority of the population no longer believe that their children will do better than them. And given the current material circumstances and economic trajectory of the UK, that is a pretty accurate belief. Something will have to change if any kind of intergenerational progression in any shape or form is going to happen. The second one I'd want to flag up is work employment and job quality. Job quality is not just nice to have. Sir Michael Marmot, probably the leading expert on health and job quality in the UK, has argued that job quality is actually a public health issue because of the huge physical and mental health problems that are created by poorly designed and extremely stressful jobs. And that's actually a really major issue. And the cost to our National Health Service of the illness that's created by low quality work is absolutely tremendous. And of course, AI could make that worse. What underpins national policy success? If you look at our case studies, what can you take out of it? Well, the overarching story is, as I've already suggested, different values and priorities, different business models and societal models will help to determine what success looks like and therefore how it will arise. If you look at the sort of one far end of the spectrum, you're looking at neoliberal models like the US and the UK, job quality is really not and has not been an important policy issue in my lifetime. It's simply not on the agenda. Everything is about short-term economic success, short-term success for firms, a belief that the invisible hand of the market will sort it out eventually, and that at best the role of government is to try and ameliorate some of the worst and most painful effects of change if they turn out not to be particularly pleasant. At the other end of the spectrum, there are much more human-centric national models. A traditional way of thinking of that is that these are countries that have developed socio-technical thinking around the workplace, work and their economy. Germany and Finland are two examples. They're very different, but I think both of them take long-term prosperity really seriously. They think quite hard about societal payoffs. They certainly think hard about job quality and trying to preserve a range of good jobs, both in terms of pay, but also in terms of working conditions, discretion, the way that management happens, and so on. And an interesting question would be where you would want to, if that's a spectrum with two ends defined, where you would want to place Singapore. I'm not going to make that judgment, but it's an interesting question. And the even more interesting question is, in future, which direction, which end of the spectrum do you want to be heading towards? Because there are choices ahead. In terms of the two countries, policies are driven, I think, in both by a very clear vision. It's something that's very distinctive when you look at them closely. And that's policy not just on AI, it's also on things like net zero, it's also on sustainability. The government and society have, not totally successfully, but they have established an understanding of what is needed. There are always arguments about how it might be achieved, but they know where they want to head. And that, I think, is a very good starting point. In Germany, what you see are a nested set of policies, Industry 4.0, followed by Work 4.0, followed by Skills 4.0, which allows for a very comprehensive approach to thinking through the implications of digitalization, automation, and AI. Germany has also managed to maintain a strong occupational labour market, one that has been around for a very long time in Germany and has survived enormous amounts of external economic pressure and change. And I think it's really interesting that there has been a choice to try and preserve that model at significant cost because it's believed that it delivers significant long-term benefit. There's also a relatively strong and durable social partnership around skills and workplace training. There's co-determination in the workplace. Trade union representatives have a strong role to play in the governance of the organisation. Sacking people is pretty hard, and there have been very significant efforts to adjust training to meet changing needs. For example, both sustainability and digital skills requirements have been built into all apprenticeship standards in Germany. All of them, not just the ones that you might think, oh, AI or sustainability, green skills is going to be important for, the lot. In Finland, what you've got is a long history, and by long I mean 40 years plus, of a very keen interest in the issue of job quality and workplace innovation. And if I had another 20 minutes, I'd fill you in on the details. But I will come back to Finland later on, around one specific thing they've done, which we did a research paper on, which I think is really fascinating, around skills foresighting as an actual mechanism for not just finding out what future skills might be, but getting people to think about it very broadly. But the capacity in terms of support to organizations around workplace innovation, job design, the infrastructure, both public and private, that the government has built up over the years is quite astonishing, and it has certainly no parallel whatsoever in the UK, or actually in most other developed countries. So it's a really interesting example to look at. What other lessons can we draw? Well, I think one of the really important ones is around policy capacity. If you've got very limited policy capacity, then there's very little point in having grand designs or grand ambitions, because you won't be able to deliver them. And if the UK government tomorrow decided to make job quality and a human-centric adoption of artificial intelligence a priority, that would mean starting out almost from scratch in terms of institutional capacity, policy capacity, knowledge, contacts, and the rest. Because it's not just government, you've got to mobilize a much broader coalition of people around co-design and co-production of the policy choices that you make. And we're not very good at that in the UK. And I'll come back to those policy capacity issues around a broader coalition in a second. What is policy capacity? Well, you can read down that list. I mean, you could add other things, but I think most of those are fairly essential. I think the one that this event speaks to is the third, the ability to create a shared understanding of the challenges. We won't get down to generating a consensus, but at least I think this event is very timely, but it also it starts a conversation, which Singapore is going to need to have about where it wants to be and what it wants to do about it and how it gets there. And I think countries that are not very good at doing that simply leave it to government or leave it to the market, are liable to find themselves in quite deep trouble. Because there needs to be a societal agreement, not everyone will agree, but an agreement about what needs to be done. I think the other one I'd flag up, because I think a lot of countries are not terribly good at it, mine isn't, is the ability to maintain feedback loops between those who actually design policy and those who have to deliver it. All too often, policy is top-down. This is what we've decided to do it. And that doesn't necessarily work brilliantly. As I've said, mobilizing a range of actors seems to be very important. Government does not have all the answers. It has some of them, and it has the power to convene. But it does need to mobilize a lot of stakeholders, particularly around topics like digitalization and AI and the future of work. All too often, government exhortation delivers relatively little because there hasn't been the ability to actually develop sufficient collective buy-in. So I think co-creation of policy is a really important thing, though it's not easy to do. It's also worth, as several people have mentioned in passing earlier today, there are lots of other policy challenges, so capacity and bandwidth are needed. There's climate change, there's the transition to net zero and the whole issue around green skills, there's migration, there's geopolitical instability, there's pushback against globalization, and there are any number of economic woes that most countries are confronting. So it does seem to me that the policy machinery is under stress in most developed countries and indeed developing, and AI is another challenge, though it's one that can be linked to some of the other challenges in ways that might be productive. And I think countries that are able to tackle these issues in the round or link them up. And it's interesting that in Europe you do see countries like Finland and Germany who link sustainability issues with automation, digitalization, and so on, are probably more likely in the long run to deliver a successful outcome at the end. Okay, capacity to deal with what? What policy challenges are there? Well, I want to try and concretize, make real some of the challenges, because it's very easy to sit and listen to this sort of high-level discourse that I've just been engaging in, nod, and then think, well, it's probably somebody else's problem. So let me give you 4 examples really rapidly. Businesses that want to adopt AI in a human-centric way but lack human resource management capacity. There are plenty of small organizations who might have one full-time HR manager who probably does a lot of HR admin and not much else. If you want to adopt AI in a human-centric manner, where do you go to for the expertise, knowledge, and support to deliver that? Because if you haven't got help, it's not likely to be a very easy journey. Higher education institutions, well, I worry that some, not all, but some courses are going to find AI putting up some major issues for them. For example, I was part of an enormous project at Oxford University looking at AI and the law in England, and it's very clear that as the large law firms start to adopt AI systems, smaller ones will follow. It'll take a long time, but it will happen. And a lot of the jobs that paralegals currently do will either change or vanish. Now, if you run a law school in a university where the bulk of your graduates go into paralegal jobs, you've got a problem. There are going to be a lot fewer of those jobs. They're going to change shape very dramatically. Their pay may also change. And if that happens, where are your students coming from, and what are you going to do about it? And I think more generally, given the figures that Phil showed this morning, there are some really hard questions for people who run middle to lower tier higher education institutions about if more and more of your graduates are going into middle tier jobs, which don't necessarily need degrees, have you got a unique selling point? Have you got a long-term market? Innovation and business support services. How to get SMEs to abandon cost-based competition and become a lot more human-centric. Do your staff actually know how to do that? Do they know how to encourage people? Do they have the skills and knowledge? How can you get businesses to be receptive to this message if they're already, and have been for a long time, locked into cost-based competition and headcount reduction? And what broader policies from government or anyone else might help shift the dial in terms of pressure on small firms to think differently? Because a lot of small firms are quite resistant to doing that, and I have some sympathy with them. And finally, on sort of adult progression, AI is going to disrupt occupational identities, at least to some extent, and it will vary enormously from occupation to occupation over time. But skill sets will change, career structures and progression pathways will change. It's almost inevitable. So there are real challenges for lifelong learning and for HR and talent management professionals. How are we going to chart new occupational identities, new career pathways, and new skill sets and education and training opportunities that can address them? And that will soak up an awful lot of time and energy. In terms of a couple of examples of watching of countries think this through and try and do things. I said I'd mention Finland. I'll have to skip Norway because I'm looking carefully at the left-hand screen, which is going to go red in a minute. Finland has done something which I think is really interesting. It's used skills foresight exercises to try and make, first of all, to find out what future skills are going to be needed, but it is also about involving a very wide range of stakeholders in the discussions that lead up to thinking about and delivering these foresight forecasts. And it's a way of getting people to think about the future in a structured fashion. And actually that's something that when, governments may be good at it, consultancies and academics may be good at it, but an awfully large chunk of the population and a lot of the organizations that exist in our society and economy do not normally lift their sights and think about that far horizon and the kind of changes it implies. And I think the Finnish exercise, and we've got a working paper on it on our website, is a really interesting example of a country trying to stimulate a structured conversation about the future and the labour market. And I think that's really important. It's not, labour market forecasting, future forecasting, is not just a technical exercise. It's a socio-technical exercise, and we need to think in that way. So, policy approach, a bottom-up approach is better than a top-down. We need to think collectively. We need to agree a sense-making sort of coalition, a settlement. And we need to encourage experimentation because we need to try test out what things will work. And the only way to do that is by trying it in a relatively low-stakes way. Again, something we're not terribly good at sometimes. Also, there are a set of questions about what we're going to need to do. And I would say that thinking about the future, what we want to avoid, what we want to achieve, and how we do it is going to be very, very important. And finally, I was told that I should try and end on a positive note, and so I have. Using the really weary old cliche from business school language, what's about to happen could be a threat or it could be an opportunity. Is there a route for firms, for sectors, for individuals, and for nation states to combine a well-educated workforce with AI augmentation and a human-centric model of digital technologies? And which country in Asia is going to be the one that actually does that? Because I would be willing to make a fair bet that one will do it. The question is who? Thank you very much.
Wonderful. Thank you, Professor Keep. Thank you for setting the stage for what should be a very interesting panel discussion. So let me invite up the panelists. And this is going to be an interesting one because we're going to have 2 remote participants dialing in. The discussant for the session is Sahara Sadiq. Please come up to the stage. The others are Lawrence Liu. I believe you are here in the audience. There you go. Lawrence is the Director AI Innovation at AI Singapore. And Riku Makela, did I pronounce that right? Great. Ecosystem Manager at Business Finland. And then the 2 remote participants are Professor Hubert Ertel, Vice President and Director of Research at the German Federal Institute of Vocational Education, and Uma Rani, who is a Senior Economist at the ILO, the International Labour Organization. As always, keep your questions on Pigeonhole, and I'm sure Sahara will get to them as she runs the panel discussion. Over to you, Sahara.
Thank you, Himanshu. Good afternoon, everyone, again. Today and now we are into a very, very naughty question on policy capacity. And I think this is a very naughty question because when it comes to policy capacity, it actually, in Ewart's presentation, suggests that it extends to every one of us in this room. And that's really, really crucial, right? Our role in building up this policy capacity. And another point that I would like to make before we start the panel discussion, today we actually also have spoken a lot about Germany and Finland. And how we have, in a way, indicated that these countries seem to be doing it right when it comes to human-centric adoption of technologies, but crucially, generally, human-centric policymaking, yeah? And today we actually have 2 of them, Riku Makela from Business Finland, and on remotely, Hubert L. from BIP, who will basically, we will put them on the hot seat. Because I basically told Riku, I didn't have a chance to tell Hubert, we don't want the standard stuff. We want to know how you guys do it. We want to know how do you go through the naughty issues that the rest of us seems to actually have to go through, that they seem to be doing it so effortlessly, yeah? So, Riku, I will ask you that question. We have Lawrence from AI Singapore that is advancing our AI agenda. And I will also ask him about the policy capacity around human centricity. And finally, we have Uma Rani. Uma basically from the ILO, and she is looking at digital labor platforms at the international level. And I think international policy capacity is really, really crucial because what we are discussing today, it's not something that's unique at the national level. And therefore, we will ask and put her on the hot seat too, in terms of what we could actually do collectively, and as what this presentation or session do is to recalibrate the trajectory of the 4th Industrial Revolution. So maybe I'll start, Riku, with you. So we do know that we've always held out Finland as an example of human-centric society. We do know in terms of the challenges that you are also confronting, but in a way embracing. If we are all here talking about digitalization, I think Finland has moved on to not just look at digitalization, but embracing sustainability and the range of agendas ahead. So I would like to ask you, Riku, is it really all good stuff? is there a challenge that Finland has, and how does it handle the difficult conversations that needs to be done as digitalization takes place, as sustainability becomes something that you need to really look at it carefully, balancing the business interest and the workforce interest and the planet interest. So, Rico, please.
Oh, thank you. Let's say that really complex question, and maybe you chose me to answer because I'm not a policymaker in Finland. So I work in a Finnish government agency. Me and my 750 colleagues, we do take care of innovation funding in Finland. Last year, 4,600 innovation projects by companies and universities in Finland. We do export promotion. 160 people of us are abroad in our trade offices and working with our embassies around the world, helping Finnish companies to reach the markets. We do investment attraction to Finland and talent attraction to Finland. And then that's why we are highly interested in these policies, although we are not writing them. We are contributing because in Finland, when we make policies, we always make studies, we make evaluations of old policies, their impact and everything, and we engage everybody in the process. Like for digitalization, there are like several steps behind the current policies, and current policies are pretty sharp, maybe also because it's kind of connected to EU-level policies. So for digitalization right now, what is guiding us kind of throughout the public sector and also in the whole economy, it's called Finland's Digital Compass. So it's a strategy for digitalization, and that was built after our own studies and everything, and after EU defined EU Digital Compass. And that is kind of a holistic approach, so it's really not at all about technology. It's about people, it's about businesses, it's about technological infrastructure and connectivity. And it's about helping people to acquire the basic skills needed to survive as citizens and needed to survive in workplace and needed for managing my own change in changing work environment. Because the premises is that in the future, we don't know what type of works we'll have, what will be taken care of by AI or other digital means. So that's why we have to prepare each of us for the future by being maybe even more flexible than we are currently. So that's my short answer.
A little bit more, Riku. What is the challenges that you faced in taking this forward? What was this, what kind of pressure points, perhaps?
If I try to answer by saying that challenges are maybe only ahead of us, because this far we have created kind of the national direction, and now it's being detailed. Now it's being planned in more detail in all different line ministries for how to implement it for employment and how to implement it for, let's say, transportation and so on. So now the big challenges are maybe ahead, because only now the trade unions and others maybe start coming to barricades if they see their challenges in implementation. I can give you just one detailed example of challenges in recent past. So in Finland, we are strong in providing digital solutions and providing AI and robotics for the world. So we have many leading companies of the world, for example, for ports in maritime. We have leading companies providing half-automated, automatic cranes for port operations and so on. They are not used in Finland that much. They are used in other places, because in Finland, trade unions have been against them, because they take the jobs from stevedores and crane drivers. So we have those kind of real-life challenges.
And any comments on how that's being dealt with? I'm sure that you guys want to know, right? Yeah.
Pretty soon, the ports, they just have to start using those automated things, because actually we have a labor shortage in many sectors, including ports. So we just don't have enough people working, and that's why we are looking for tens of thousands of people from abroad to come to work in Finland as we speak.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm going to hand over to Hubert. Hubert, can you hear us?
Yes, I can hear you very well. Can you hear me?
Very well. Good morning. It's 8 plus, right? 8 plus there in both Germany and Switzerland. I wanted to basically ask the same question to you, Hubert. Germany, we've always regarded Germany as one of the human-centric countries. Can you share with us the challenges that Germany is now, in a way, confronting, dealing with when it comes to the issue of transition to an AI economy? How is that being handled? And is your policy capacity still robust? Needed new ways of doing things? Any insights that you can share with us, the rest of us, who are struggling or perhaps trying to reinvent the policy capacity in our respective countries?
Yes, I think the first thing I would say is in terms of problems, there's a lot of talk in Germany, and that's very justified talk about labor shortages, same thing as Rico just mentioned. And at my institute here in Bonn, we do projections of how the economy will develop in the foreseeable future and what that means for our skills demands. And of course, at the Institute, we also have all the data of how many people will conduct training and will acquire qualifications. And the projections are quite bleak, actually, particularly in areas that are required for reaching our climate targets. We've already got a significant shortage of skilled labor, and the projections show that this will only get more severe if we don't react quickly to it. So that's a huge problem. And of course, the role of digital tools and AI is meant to augment jobs, maybe sometimes substitute jobs, really help us with that labor shortage. But how to do that exactly, that's what we are grappling with. And allow me another comment, the human-centric and partnership-based model that Ewart set out in his talk for Germany. I mean, sometimes it drives you mad. Exactly that sort of approach that has worked for a long time, and it drives you mad because it makes quick reactions all but impossible. And I think we are at a point where we need quicker reaction to the challenges that we see quite clearly in our data. And I think that's what we are struggling with. So I would say there are many things to be said in favor of the German model, but clearly in terms of reaction time, we are struggling. And introduction of AI and digital tools in the labor market, very similar to what Riku says, sometimes is blocked by exactly the partnership model. And we are just about to see that breaking up a little bit, that tendency of trade unions, for example, to block certain steps that are necessary for modernizing the system. And it will be interesting where we go with that.
That's really fascinating in terms of the challenges of keeping that policy capacity, the policy capacity to keep things together and navigating on the transitions that will have those pressure points as they come. And I say this because I just came back from a study trip, an IEL study trip to Finland, Sweden, and Switzerland, and I could see that they were at it, right? You know, so that the issues keep on coming up. It's always new, and it's being worked at again and again and again. And this is then a decision that is being made practically in everyday practice to keep this system going. And it actually means to the rest of us, we actually also are confronting with decisions in our everyday activity. All of us in this room, in some form or other, are taking on a policy capacity role. And those decisions that we make matter. I'm going to put Lawrence on a hot seat because Ewart has asked a very provocative question, even if he was so subtle about it. He's actually asking, who in Asia will have that human-centric model? I'm going to ask Lawrence if he actually thinks the way in which we have approached AI innovation is sufficiently human-centric And if you think there are ways in which we have done well in Singapore and areas that we could do better.
Okay. Afternoon, everyone. So I'm Lawrence. I'm Director for AI Innovation in AI Singapore. For those who are not aware, AI Singapore is NRF, Singapore government-funded R&D program office for AI. We have another entity called the National AI Office, which some of you may be aware of. And I often get asked, what's the difference between the two of us, AI Singapore and the National AI Office? So when you talk about policy, it's the National AI Office. They produce PowerPoints. AI Singapore, we produce Python. Okay, we produce Python code. So we are engineers. We execute the policies. So on the question whether the way we have created our programs and so on, is it human-centric? I'll be very honest. When I joined AI Singapore, I was the first employee back in 2017. My KPI was to do 100 AI projects under this program called the 100 Experiments. That was only KPI. Was there a policy around it? Well, it's just, okay, just go and help as many enterprises and SMEs as possible, right? So no grand policies around that. But as we executed the 100 experiments, what we found was that there was a lot of uncertainty and fear about AI on the ground. When we went to talk to the professionals, when we went to talk to the taukees, the business owners, and so on, they say, well, no, I don't want to bring in AI. Will I lose my job, or will I accidentally create a Terminator? That's a real response I got. And I say, okay, well, if there's so much fear and uncertainty, I'm not going to be able to meet my 100E KPI. So we created at that time, what we called AI for Everyone, way before Andrew Ng had his course. We even trademarked it, so it's officially trademarked, AI for Everyone. And it's a 3-hour program where we let the audience know, without any programming or anything, what exactly is AI. So we wanted to bring to the audience, and in this way, your human centricity, that AI is a tool. It's just maths. It's here to help you do your job better, faster, cheaper, and so on and so forth. That there's no need to fear. So it was a very selfish reason. Again, no national policy. It was a selfish reason we created AI for Everyone. Because without that, I couldn't meet my 100E targets. Now, once the AI for Everyone was created, up to date, I think we have probably trained about 200,000 to 300,000 Singaporeans in AI, just on that course alone. All the schools adopted it, the whole MOE schools, all the polys adopted it, the Civil Service College adopted it. So most government officers will have gone through that program. So in a way, it has now become a policy. So again, a lot of the programs that we have created in AI Singapore was not from a policy angle. It was trying to execute a program to get companies to do AI, and we encounter a lot of gaps or a lot of barriers. And then we have to be creative enough to come up with new programs to overcome that. So AI for Everyone is one. The other one on AI talent. Lawrence, you go and do 100 AI projects, okay? Before I took on the job, I remember having lunch with the DS and say, well, there's a shortage of AI talents. If you want me to come in, I need to be able to match the market rate. I'm not asking for Google's salary, but close enough to be able to attract engineers, AI engineers to join us. Yeah, okay, can. When I joined, the AI Singapore program was parked into the universities, and among all the universities colleagues here, I think none of our salaries is near the Google rate, okay? So how am I going to execute 100 AI projects when I can't hire AI engineers? For those who are familiar with the Singapore system, Lawrence, write a waiver, ask NRF to allow you to bring in foreigners. But I'm AI Singapore. I can't really do that. So what did we do? We say, okay, we followed the German example. We created an apprenticeship program. bring in Singaporeans who have self-taught themselves enough AI, good enough. We give them very short time of deep skilling training, and then we put them to actually work on the 100E projects. So this AI apprenticeship program, again, not a policy, it was a program to solve our problem, building around humans, building around Singaporeans, to get these people in to help me solve my problem. At the same time, we train them, and after 9 months, they rejoin the industry. So this is a full-time program. They have to quit their jobs, come in, and after that, they rejoin the industry. So basically what I want to say is a lot of the programs that we have created was not really from a policy angle. It was really trying to fix problems that we encounter.
That's really nice. But in a way, what we have actually discussed today in terms of the trends on job scarcity around the world in major digital hubs, and Singapore is one where the evidence is actually showing that digitalization has not really benefited everyone lift up, especially those at the bottom in that sense. Would you actually say we may need to evolve the policy capacity to tackle it differently, or to take it to the next level, I would say? And what could we do about that? Because while we are training the AI engineers, we actually need to lift the rest of society in terms of domain expertise. What do you think?
Yeah, so I mean, AI for everyone is one way to get everyone to be more AI literate, what we call literacy in AI or being literate in AI. Now, AI before Gen AI, before ChatGPT, was a very bespoke, siloed solution that wherever you bring into the organization, only a few people are going to use it. And for some of these people who are using it, they don't even care it's AI or non-AI. To them, it's just a tool. They're just using it to do their job better. With generative AI, what's going to happen in the next 3, 4, 6 months? It's going to be that every one of us in this room will be using AI. And I'm not talking about the AI on your phone that you play around and so on. You're actually going to use AI to do productive work. Microsoft Copilot, Google Duet AI, and so on. Once it gets rolled out onto the desktop, everyone will be using it. So I think you're going to see easily 2x, 5x, or 10x increase in productivity, not necessarily among the working the professionals, but your normal administrating staff, marketing staff, and so on. You see tremendous increase in productivity because of these tools.
Very nice. We will look out for that and measure it. That's what we do in research. Yes. I just want to hand over to Uma. Uma, a big challenge for the world, yeah, in terms of digital labor platforms, and related to that, how we are going to build policy capacity to deal with it at both the national and international level. I mean, digital connects it in and cuts it in so many ways. What are your thoughts on that? And where are the pressure points? And crucially, for this one, where are the opportunities?
Yeah, thanks a lot, Sarah, and thanks for having me. And I've had a chance to listen to the earlier session too. And I want to pick what David said in the earlier session about, there's a use of AI, but it's very important to look at the imputation of AI. And I think that's fundamentally very important. And I think it's also in a discussion like this, where we are thinking of national and looking at good examples, I think it's very, very important for us to go global. And why am I saying that? Because I think what's not necessarily discussed in this entire AI tools, AI development is, development does take place at the high end, but there's a lot of work that is done at the low end. And there are lots of invisible workers who are actually working behind it. And I think they often do not get any recognition. And for any tool to develop and to be a success, and here, even if I were to take the most recent ChatGPT as an example, it's been, lauded for improving productivities, for being an augmentation tool and all of it. But I think what is under emphasized or underscored within this entire development is how there are a number of workers, especially from developing countries, who are actually trying to ensure that there's a lot of cleaning happening so that that AI tool can perform better and that it can give the results that workers in the firms or whoever wants it. I've done some interesting examples, not only with ChatGPT, but even virtual assistants. I think Lawrence was talking about examples of, advertising, marketing, where AI tools might develop. The one tool that I've seen develop quite rapidly over the last decade has been secretarial assistants. And you wonder that secretarial assistants would move away from the market. Yes, they do in the global north, but what happens is you have a lot of human in the loop because AI is not really developed as a tool. You think it's a tool you're using, but actually there are humans in developing countries who are actually trying to work behind it. I think this dimension often never gets discussed into the discussion of AI development and also AI regulation. And I think it will be very important for us to get down to that because the working conditions of many of these workers are very, very bad. And there are also huge psychological impacts that are there. I think fundamentally what I see, and I think this was also something that was touched upon earlier and also by Ewart, there's an issue around job scarcity versus labor scarcity. And I think the issue is much more that you have highly educated workers in these developing countries doing these tasks. And, one would think that education is a silver bullet for having good formal jobs, but that's not what you actually see in reality. So how do you actually get to regulations which would take care of some of these dimensions? That would be very important. I think the second intervention I'd like to make is something that Professor Ewart talked about. As we move with new AI tools coming in, have we really need to rethink the occupations and the tasks and all of it? And here, I think I'd like to remind ourselves that this is a process that industry often does, and it has been taking place if you really are talking to industries and to the firms per se, because I think in the tech industry, where I have done quite a bit of research, it was very interesting and fascinating to find out that if you really look at the 2000s, there was very clearly a demand for what you would call as T-shaped profiles, where you have a worker who has very in-depth knowledge and expertise in a particular technology or a domain, such as a Java. And then, you found that there was a shift towards T-shaped or pie-shaped, where you have an in-depth knowledge about the technology, but also you try to see how it can be applied to a whole range of different industries. And today we are at a completely different juncture. And I think part of the reason for that juncture has been the rise of the digital talent platforms that have come in, where you can have solutions for all kinds of software programming as well as data analytics. So the demand of the industry has also changed, where you want a worker not just having an in-depth knowledge, but also having the knowledge of a business strategy and to implement it. And they call it as X-shaped profiles. So, there is a shift that is happening in the industry as well. But I think the underlying point I'd like to make by citing these two cases is that while we want to think national, the issue is far more global. And I think, how do we then look at not just the workers within our country, but the workers in other parts of the world who are actually helping us to develop this tool? I think we shouldn't forget that bit into our understanding of how some of these AI tools would have an impact on organizations, basically.
Omar has just raised our challenge up a huge notch. Huge reminder to all of us, those in the advanced economy, that the AI development sits on development and work of those in less developed countries who sometimes are working in conditions that we may not even accept in our home country. I think that's a reality, and it's really puts us in a sense a responsibility as well, a huge responsibility that we manage this fourth industrial revolution in inclusive ways. Yeah, I'm just going to stop here for questions first before we go into this very, very difficult and thorny issue. Questions that you want to ask the panel here. Everyone's fine? Thank you.
Thank you. I have more of a comment rather than question, but the panel may want to comment on it. I'm Jukka from Aalto University, which is a Finnish university. We have an executive education business here. Now, I've been observing this education scene a long time. I've been in it myself for over 20 years. I lived in Singapore for 30. And this comment is a little bit, it's not about policy, but it's related to that. I think there's a danger we try to think, what do we change policies that impact adult learners? Fine. But I think the educators, the MOEs, etc., need to think of this more holistically and entire lifespan. I comment on Finland. There's been a lot of conversation about Finnish education system. This is one thing, in my opinion, has changed in Finland over the last 20, 30 years. Really, we've gone away from that rote learning, teaching skills, specific math. Of course, they are there. But what Finland has gotten better at is to teach people to challenge things, to challenge the status quo, ask the questions, why? Why not? How could we do this differently? People are much more bolder, braver nowadays. And I think this is a very significant change. And it starts when you're a child. If you try to change a 40, 50-year-old adult to change something, let's think about AI creatively, you're going to have a big challenge, right? In Finland, kindergartens now, they don't teach you to count and read. They teach you life skills, how to take care of the environment, how to take care of your friends, how do you communicate. My 4-year-old relative, I was telling Riku the story, I think, the other day, taught me why recycling batteries is important and how you do it. She's 4 years old. That's what they teach at the kindergarten thing. So you see, it's just an anecdote, but once you teach people that kind of critical thinking skills and taking care of environment and so on, then they will also, adults, they think differently, right? More creative, right? So hopefully that makes sense. Maybe the panel has some comments on that.
Ewart, would you like to take that?
Have I got that work? Yes, it's working. Yeah, no, I think it's really important. There's a huge debate going on about what 21st century skills, which is a rather clunky term since we're already into the third decade of the 21st century, what these skills should be. What's the fundamental platform that countries should be trying to equip their workers and citizens with to enable them to be both successful workers and citizens? And it's the one thing that I'd say, I mean, we've got quite a bit of material on our project website about this. I think the thing that's plain to me is that the model of curriculum and pedagogy that we had and still have in some countries, it's essentially a 19th century model, when compulsory education was introduced in many countries, is no longer particularly well suited to purpose. We are going to have a fundamental rethink about what education in all its phases is for, but we need to get the schooling right, because if we don't lay down that platform, everything else is much harder to achieve, as you say. As David was saying in the earlier session, educationists, a lot of them, are remarkably conservative with a small c. They like what they know, and what they know is what they got when they were little. But it really actually isn't, sometimes very much more sophisticated than that. But I think many societies are going to be facing quite an existential conversation about what the future of schooling is going to be in the future.
Yes, please.
Okay, so I'll kind of continue from that. So one thing that now we have added in Finland for our national strategy, the digital compass, we have added the kind of wording that now the digital basic skills will be a new civic skill that will be taught in school system, not yet maybe at preschool level, because there you have just ask why, but later on, and then throughout the lifelong learning, continuous education. So now we are embedding that into the kind of systemic way of helping to understand the basics, because, for example, AI, it's only as good as the algorithm plus the data that is teaching it. As an example, yesterday I was testing ChatGPT and I was asking that what is Finland's AI strategy and digital strategy, and it was answering me like a nice bullet point list, and I was looking that doesn't sound right. Then I scrolled down and found an additional paragraph that, be careful, this is a little bit old data because this was 2 years old. I collected the data, so you better check the government websites. So I went to government websites and found the national strategy that was published only 10 months ago. And then I went back to ChatGPT asking that what is Finland's digital compass? It answered that, sorry, I don't know because my data is old, but it sounds like a government policy. Really good ChatGPT. So we have to teach these types of skills for people of all ages, so we know how to approach these tools, because they are only tools and they are not new. Since 70s we have had AI algorithms.
Yeah, absolutely. I think this is, it's a continuation. And this continuation is, I just want to thank Professor Irina Grugalis from the UK. She left a comment here. She basically said human-centered versus routinized kind of approaches has long been a choice. Some countries and companies do choose human-centered, but they are in the minority, and there is a clear danger this pattern will be repeated here. And in a way, a conversation for us on how we want to do things differently, where in the global community, the composition of countries with human centricity is actually more. There is a question here, to what extent, and this is linked to what I'm going to ask another question, to what extent government should intervene and in what forms, given that private sectors are the party that most benefited from competitiveness in their sector? So I'm going to ask Hubert that question, to what extent government should intervene, in the way companies use AI and digitalization, in what forms that it actually benefits society. From your perspective, how do you actually address those sentiments that this is basically a private affair?
Well, I think it's not only a private affair. Obviously, I think we can agree on that very, very quickly. Like with all new technologies, there needs to be some kind of framework around that ensures that the development is going in the right direction. And of course, in a sort of partnership-led model, you will have safeguards for AI not dehumanizing jobs and so on. You will have safeguards against that in the fabric of your system. I'm not a strong believer in government being able to do this safeguarding centrally. I think there needs to be a legal framework where the state can intervene if things go wrong. But beyond that, I think it needs to be the stakeholders themselves that need to sort things out, and for that you need certain rules. I also wanted to come back to the role of critical thinking that was mentioned before in the example about Finnish kindergartens. I wanted to add one example maybe from the German context, not in kindergarten, but a bit later. An example that shows the tension that we have when strong and short-term needs in the labor market produce certain demands. And the example is that in Germany, we've got a shortage of people who can install solar panels on the roofs. Very simple matter, really, and I'm sure other countries have similar problems. So of course, what the companies are calling for are short-term training courses of about 2 to 4 weeks, producing the skills that are needed to put the solar panels on the roofs. And the danger there is that you don't produce critical thinking in those courses, and also potentially as soon as the solar panels are installed, that you have people who've got some sort of qualification which becomes totally meaningless as things progress. And of course, the partnership model in Germany prevents this from happening. Certainly prevents these sorts of courses being seen as a substitute for proper apprenticeships, where the sort of comprehensive learning in an area, in an occupational area, is central and provides the opportunities for people to progress in the future with on-the-job training and so on, but they get the comprehensive basis in the apprenticeships.
Uma, can you hear us?
Yes, I can.
Would you like to add to that?
Yes, absolutely. I can hear my own. Yeah, thanks a lot. I think I want to carry on this conversation around, critical thinking and how we have to look at policy. And one of the very good examples, and I completely agree with what Rico was saying, that, you're going to get AI is as good as the algorithm. That's exactly my thoughts in a way, because it's going to just spit out what you actually feed in. And if you're going to feed in, many people say, oh, well, it can be done to write speeches and all of that. But for me, some of these tasks actually require critical thinking. And do we want to really give up that kind of a critical thinking to an AI tool? To an extent, we should think of this tool as only to an extent that it helps you to actually search for certain things, but even that needs to be double-checked. But I think even in that whole process, there's a lot of critical thinking that is involved. So, some people might argue that, oh, well, ChatGPT can do a literature review because, you can feed in all the literature and it does it. But the way we think a particular issue and the perspective that we have is far different from what you can feed it into an algorithm. And I think it's very, very important for us to differentiate it. And here, I think what I've seen very powerful in recent times is the labor relations. And that's what, we at the ILO would call it as social dialogue. And this came out very, very well during the strike of the Writers Guild this year in the US, where they were very successful in arguing, saying that, well, this AI cannot replace, us as writers. And to an extent, what it should be utilized is to come up with searching certain things or to come up with some ideas, but that's it, it stops there. And I think that kind of decision has to be co-determined, and there has to be a conversation. And here, it's very important for the government to again play a role. And I think this is a process of a dialogue. And I think that would be very, very fundamental as we move forward. And just a second quick point, and I really like the way our colleague, the person who was asking the question from Finland, said about how this critical thinking has to be shaped from a very young age. And I think the kind of efforts that you take, not to just talk about solving a problem, but to make them think, what are the issues? And this was very nicely also portrayed in the last slide by Professor David in his presentation, where he said, you ask someone, what is very important? The issue is AI cannot solve the climate change problem, right? That is, we as individuals, we as a society, we as governments, firms, and workers have to really think about how do you really resolve some of these issues, and that needs different types of skills, that needs different types of thinking, and AI cannot solve these.
Very good. Questions from the audience here for the panel? Yes, please.
Can you hear me? There's something that was mentioned here briefly, but I think it goes through the entire day, and I would like to hear your opinion about it. And it has two words. It's AI literacy. I think it's very fundamental to ask ourselves, what is AI literacy? When it comes to asking about the models, asking about education, asking about pedagogy. And the rumor says that Finland was really good with media literacy. Am I right about this? You're really investing in it for years, maybe earlier than others in some ways. But I would love to hear actually your views. What is AI literacy?
Right. I'm going to ask Lawrence. You talk about that program that you had to introduce as a response to your program, your KPIs.
Yeah.
When you think about AI literacy, now that the question has been thrown broad and open, how would you actually want to think about AI literacy in the context of Singapore?
So when I think of AI literacy, the end goal is to get the business owner to understand that AI is a tool, and he should leverage it to for his business. So I come from AI literacy from that angle. So we explain in that it was a 3 hours seminar, right? We go through really what is AI, and we actually walk them through how an AI system is being built, but with very little maths or no maths at all. We just show examples, and in the end, I usually conclude it's nothing more than a glorified y equals to mx plus c, something that you would have studied in your secondary school or in your junior college, and it's just a lot of vectors and matrices that's going to be multiplied together. So it is really just maths. Because a lot of people before that, they thought that, this AI, this super complicated thing, there's a lot of black box, a lot of magic, and so on. But once we explain and show them this is exactly how a prediction is done, or how actually computer sees an image, or how a computer hear and understand an audio, we actually show it very simply in just one slide. Then they say, okay, it's not complicated. Once they understand that okay, that's how a computer sees an image and how computer vision works, it demystifies AI for them. And once that's done, they say, okay, then they can go back and think, okay, I have now this problem statement. I think computer vision can do this now. It's no longer a myth or something magical to them. It's just, okay, yeah, that's how computer vision works. This is a computer vision problem that I can use AI to solve, and that's what that's how I think it in terms of AI literacy. And just to complete the story, and there was talking about pedagogy and so on. Besides AI for everyone, we went further down, as in we went all the way down to kids. So we actually have AI for students, AI for kids, and remember, my KPI is to do projects for customers, for industry, not to go to the schools to teach. So when we created that, what we did was we created a curriculum. We went to parent volunteers. Instead of you volunteering to be a traffic warden in the morning to try to get your kid into school, why don't you come for this AI for kids training? We certify you, and you go to the school and tell the school that, hey, you can teach the kids AI now. So it becomes a very holistic a way of doing things, where now the parent becomes AI literate, and then they are going back in the schools to teach the kids AI.
Yeah, thank you. I wanted to ask Riku, do you have the same understanding as AI literacy as Lawrence?
That's one side of that, because from Finland we generated just similar cores around the same time. And then that's open online course. You can go there, check it out, elementsofai.com. It's free, but if you want to have study units in certain countries, you have to pay a small fee because local university provides you study unit diploma. So that's similar goals there, and it kind of demystifies it. So it's about computer code, and it's about data that teaches it, and it's just basic software thing. So that's kind of the basic thing there. And there's much more, but let's not go there. So elementsofai.com, please get there. More than 1 million users this far, 500,000 Finns. Finnish president did it first in 2017.
Yeah, that's right, elements.ai. I think AI Sweden also adopted that one as well. I wanted to, we have 6 minutes more. Any question from the live audience? Yeah? Okay, I'm going to take one question here that seems to be really, really quite crucial. How can governments lay the foundation to expand the policy capacity and involve a diverse network of stakeholders, including the workers themselves, in this conversation of AI inclusion, AI literacy, AI for social good in that sense, including the labor market? I'm going to ask, I'm running out of people. Maybe I ask you, Ewart, yeah?
I knew that was going to happen. I knew that was going to happen. Someone's going to ask me the most difficult question of the lot. In other words, how do you do all this? I think the answer is, first of all, that in a country the population size, and actually physical size of Singapore, it's probably rather easier than it is, for instance, in the UK, because you're more densely networked to start with. You could argue that this event today is actually the start, or one of the starts, of convening groups of people to start thinking about this. And until there's that catalyst, nothing much happens. It's absolutely critical that a debate starts. I think there's an interesting question about how government and other actors try to harness the institutions that already exist within society, within the economy, within broader civil society, within communities, within the education system, to start getting groups of very different people to sit down and puzzle out together what they want to achieve and how they want to achieve it. And as I've tried to emphasize, what they want to avoid, because I think that's actually really critical. But I think it's doable. It won't happen overnight. I mean, you've got to, Singapore is not poor in institutional capacity, but focusing it on this issue and getting the different agencies and different parts of government to think holistically about what is a plan, what is an approach, what's the strategy, which both government across the different silos of government, but also can cooperate, but also how they can harness a much broader range of actors, including individuals, to try and deliver this is going to be critical. Some countries are good at this, some countries are getting better at this, and some countries are getting worse at it. And I have the misfortune to live in a country that's getting worse at this kind of thing. But it is going to be, it is the ability of societies or countries or nations to come up with a settlement that they believe they can live with, that's positive for their population, and which they can deliver, is going to have a very important and material impact on the well-being, both economic and political, of their country. So, I think this is quite a high-stakes activity, and I think, Institute for Adult Learning should be congratulated for throwing their pebble into this pond and starting to get people to think.
Thanks, Ewart. Few things to sum up our discussion. One, the discussion around, is it a private affair of companies? I think the entire panel here agrees it's not, because this is a social dialogue. We are all in this together. The benefits needs to be shared. We also talk about AI education, AI literacy, and a range of ways in which this was discussed, from young schools, and to what Lawrence shared around educating the business owners, and to what Riku shared around the elements of AI, which is essentially a MOOC course, yeah? And so that's a range of ways around AI education. And it would basically touch on substantially around that bringing together of the different policy stakeholders. I want to connect with what Hubert basically remind us in terms of that there will be tensions and there will be issues that we actually need to deal with and work through it, right? And finally, I want also to bring what Boma basically said in terms of international dimensions to it, that as we are tackling our national issues, we are also an international member of the global community, and in so how our policies actually connect to the interests of the global society is actually something that I think we don't spend enough time thinking about. So I'd like to thank all the panel for raising such fantastic issues, and I think what it has raised is more issues. But I hope, like what Ewart said, that this is actually the start. We will be having workshops in the next 2 days, and that workshops, I hope, as you're attending them, in addition to your head as an individual, as an organization, let's also take a head of a policy capacity, given this broader definition of different stakeholders coming together to expand the policy capacity of a society. Thank you.
I think there's a photograph on that. So, no, I should compliment the panel. You finished 37 seconds before. So you have extra time. Awesome. Yeah, so now I get 37 seconds. Okay. Well, another fascinating discussion. And the only thing that was coming to my mind as I was hearing your discussions is it not just takes a village, it takes probably the globe to bridge the digital. Earlier we used to talk about a digital divide. If you don't want an AI divide, we probably need the globe to come together to find solutions. So fantastic. Thank you so much. We should have the question, the reflection question on your pigeonhole, looking for your responses. And let's see what the poll suggests. Meanwhile, yes, you can go ahead with the picture. Yes. It'll save us some time. There you go. So the question is, in one word or phrase, what are the key societal interests that must be kept in mind while developing such AI policies? Let's see what you come up with. Interestingly, all the words that are coming up there are all about societal issues, all about humanitarian issues, humanity issues. Nobody is talking about Python code here, that's for sure. So it's all about equity, inclusivity, fairness, and all of that. So obviously, the panel discussion and all the things we've been talking about all day seems to have resonated with the crowd here. So thank you so much for your attention and time. I'm now going to move into the closing of the conference by inviting up Professor Phil Brown to give his closing remarks.
Thank you. It seems like an age when I was last here waving the microphone. For me, it's been an absolutely fantastic day. I've really enjoyed it and really hope that you have as well. And it's a really major team effort. Some people are in this room, other people aren't. Many people have made a contribution. And there's been difficult times. But everybody is stuck together. And that, I think, is very, very impressive. One of the reasons is because people are aware that these are crucial issues. and they want to make a difference. And that, I think, has been what has really allowed us to gel as a team. But I want to pay special thanks to the team in Singapore, and particularly to Sahara. Because although I've been the director, without Sahara, we wouldn't be here. She has played an absolutely crucial role in all aspects of this research program. And I'm really grateful to the team as well I'm really grateful to Chang sitting at the back there, and Candice and Brian, who've been absolutely there to support Sahara. But I also want to pay particular thanks to Renee. Because it's much easier to fund research that is safe. Much easier. Renee did not do that. She's been there to fight our corner. And that, I think, is really important. So I'm going to do the same thing again. There's been a whole number of themes that we could pick up during the day. I'm just going to pick up a couple of them. Shaping, not responding, I think, is critical. Shaping what? What's the vision? What are we trying to create? What does it mean to be educated? What do we mean by social justice? What do we mean by contribution in the future of work? These things we have not resolved, and we need to try to resolve them. What we describe in many ways as social problems require human solutions. There is no technical fix. So we need to really think about that. Another issue which I think is very important is that we've talked at times about the importance of bottom-up capacity building and empowerment. That is crucial. This is not just a conversation about elites and between the people in this room. It impacts everybody. And so we need a much more of a bottom-up approach to this. And also, what we would suggest from the evidence that we have is that job quality is not only a question of getting people up the skills hierarchy, it's what they're doing tomorrow morning. It's what we do every day. And I think that is something that we need to keep hold of in our discussions, because it relates very closely, of course, to questions of inequality and of opportunity and of social mobility. All these things really matter. And what we've also would suggest, of course, is that the whole question of generative AI and related technologies, it's informed our discussion, but it means that it's just the beginning, really. It's not that it's the end of our research program as such, but it's just the beginning of these debates and discussions, and the need then for research, which is, as we've just heard, which is global. We need this international collaboration, which we've got in this room. So the question is, how do we take that forward, and how do we build on that, and the people not here who are online, how do we build on that capacity? And I think that is something we need to think about, because we can talk about a growth model, but what does that mean in terms of how that is implemented in different contexts, when we know institutional context is very, very important, and there are different politics and different political economies that we're dealing with? How do we spread the word on this, and what does it really, really mean? And I think I've got one plea, in a way, is that I do not know where the research capacity for this is coming from. Right? So we can pull together, but where is the future research team to do this? I mean, you've got older people that a few of them presented, who, who basically, not including Sahara on that, who basically towards the end of their careers. But where is the younger generation? Because it's hard work, because you're working between education, between economics, between sociology, social policy. You're in the middle of all of it. And so how do you train for that? But we have no choice. We have to train for it. Otherwise, we will not make the progress that we need to make. And finally, to say is that we hope to continue this work. There's a lot more on the website, and we have the workshops over the next couple of days. Look forward to seeing people there. But basically, I just want to thank everybody. Okay.
Thank you, Phil. And with that, it's now my duty to welcome Professor Yo Lee Fiao, the Executive Director of the Institute of Adult Learning.
Thank you. Well, Excellencies, distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen, good evening. I think we have a whole day full of interesting discussion. And as we draw the day activity to a close, I just want to thank everyone for your active participation as we exchange ideas and insights on how we may collectively shape or steer the future of work, education, and learning in the age of AI towards novel models of human centricity, productivity, and of course, shared prosperity. As we discussed today, the findings from the Digital Future of Work Research Program has shown us that how AI technology with its rapid advancement in human reasoning and generative capability will profoundly transform and shape the knowledge of work and, of course, the trajectory for high-skilled workers in the economy. I think as we grapple with the new realities of the AI economy, the research finding has actually reinforced that society at all levels will need to make wise choices on how to best use AI technology to set organizations and society on a pathway towards higher productivity and hopefully more agile, and also embrace human-centric AI innovations in organizations in ways that best augment the potential of the highly educated workforce. I think the challenges are real, and yet at the same time, we do not take them for granted. I think in this regard, I like to say that adult education and learning have a very important role to play in preparing the workforce for this new AI economy. Likewise, in the field of adult education and learning, AI is also changing how we're going to learn and teach. And especially for some of the adult educators here, you will probably have to ask yourself, is the classroom setting going to change? I must say that AI offers immense potential to make learning more engaging, more personalized, more accessible, and to maximize its benefit for a broader spectrum of learners. But as we heard today, this requires us to carefully, and I repeat that, to carefully calibrate our educational structures and pedagogical approaches. We need to resist the temptation to use AI and digital platforms to just unbundle our teaching and learning, but we need to carefully look on how to use AI to integrate processes of acquiring knowledge, applying such knowledge practically, and fostering connections, thus empowering our learners. I think that's the thing that we must bear in mind, that AI should serve its purpose when it's used the right way. At the Institute of Adult Learning, I think we recognize that we have a pivotal role to play in contributing to these objectives, to support our adult educators, adult learning community to embrace AI technology, to deliver future-oriented and preferably high-quality teaching and learning experience. We are steadfast in our commitment to harness our research findings to inform our use of AI in education and instructional practices through pedagogical, grounded, and robust ways. As echoed by many of you today, we are committed to deliver this with a strong focus on holistic capability development and hopefully to keep learners and the learning process integrated, ensuring that learning remains inclusive, equitable, up-to-date with developments in the AI economy, even in the midst of disparity in the digital access. I think today we did talk a little bit about the fact that not everybody have access to technology. In dealing with the complex economic and social challenges presented by the AI economy, I think platforms like this conference are vital to encourage active engagement with a whole range of ideas and perspectives on a global scale. The conference has brought together, whether we are academics, policymakers, corporate strategies, technologists, human capital practitioners, or even learning experts. We hope to encourage mutual learning, the exchange of experience, and of course, generating new ideas to identify issues that we can work on and hopefully enable us to create new, bold ways of thinking as we support each other in making well-formed decisions and serve the best interest of society. I hope that the conversation doesn't end today. It's the beginning of many conversations that at this conference itself, we create this platform or set the groundwork for ongoing dialogues and collaborative discussions at the global level. As we conclude today, I'd like to express my heartiest appreciation to those who have made this global conference possible today. Firstly, the research team of the Digital Future of Work Research Program for your persistence over the last 4 years, despite of COVID, in collecting and analyzing large amount of data, evidence, and synthesizing them into new knowledge and transformative insight that have enriched our collective understanding of how AI will transform the future of work and learning. And of course, of particular mention is Professor Philip Brown of Cardiff University, who has steered this team of researchers. This program was jointly hosted by Cardiff University, IAL, the University of Bristol, and of course, the University of Oxford Centre of Skills, Knowledge, and Organization Performance as program partners. Next, I'd like to thank Skills Future Singapore for supporting and funding this research program. I think this has only been made possible because of them, that we can bring many heads together to put this together. And of course, our presenters and panelists, several of them who have made journeys from many different parts of the world to be with us today. Thank you for contributing insightful perspectives that has greatly enriched today's discussion, and I'm sure in the next 2 days as well. I also like to thank my IL colleagues who are all busy running around. Some of you may not be aware. Actually, today as you walked in, you register yourself. Actually, they are the people that runs the show. Many of them, by the way, were actually our researchers as well, collecting data, putting them together. And yet, for this event, with a tight budget, they say, we'll roll up our sleeves and get the conference going. I'd like to thank them for all their hard work. They were here. Yeah, they were here till late last night, and they told me, you go home first, we'll sort this out. And so that's what I did. And I came in this morning, and it's all sorted out. But last but not least, I'd like to thank our delegates, all of you today, for your active and engaging participation, which has certainly contributed to the success of this conference. Just to close for today, I'd like to emphasize again that the realm of possibilities with AI is boundless. It falls upon all of us collectively to harness the potential of AI to empower individuals, enhance learning, and drive economic growth for the greater good of all. Thank you, and have a nice evening.
Well, thank you, Professor Yeo. And the good news, we've landed the plane on time. It's exactly 5 o'clock. Isn't it? Fabulous. So, ladies and gentlemen, we have come to the end of day one of the Digital Futures of Work Global Conference. Thank you very much for your patience. Can I request that you share your experiences, provide feedback on the Pigeonhole? This is the QR code. Please take the time to provide overall feedback and then feedback by session as well. There are lots of exciting activities lined up for tomorrow and the day after. So for those of you who are joining us, don't forget your badges at home. Bring them along. And I have one final request, which is for the panelists to come up here for a photograph, the speakers and the panelists. And for the rest of you, thank you very much. Have a lovely evening.